Well, hello and welcome to my latest video. As many of you will know, I have recently completed a 9-day trek, Land's End to John O'Groats. Yes, 931 miles across the length, not quite breadth, of the Great Britain. And there is a rather long video about it, but I did say, and I have done, a series of videos giving lessons from LeJog route, as it's known to us LeJoggers, with various tips and suggestions. So this particular video is about 7 tips, ideas, suggestions that I found quite helpful when doing Land's End to John O'Groats, a long ride, and I think you might find helpful as well if you're doing that or a similar long ride. So let's get straight into it with number one. Number one is a water bottle. And you're thinking, water bottle, Julian? That's your first tip, a water bottle? No, stay with me, viewers, stay with me. This is your water bottle, and obviously you fill it with water, and probably you'll have your favourite electrolyte tablets that you put into it. My additional secret ingredient is, yes, sugar. And you will know the energy benefits of having sugar. So what I started doing was, we were staying in hotels, so I would steal, well, not quite steal actually, because they are there for your use and enjoyment. I would steal the little sachets of sugar that you get with your tea and your coffee making facilities, and I would put 2 sachets of sugar in each of my bottles, and I would have some sachets in my handlebar bag. And when we stopped to fill up our bottles, I would add that extra bit of sugar as well. Now, it's hard to say whether that additional sugar made a particular difference, but I managed the 9 days pretty easily. Didn't find any of the 9 days too difficult. And did the sugar help? Well, who knows, but it certainly didn't do any harm. So, little tip there for you, put some sugar in your bottle. Put some lead in your pencil as well if you can find some lead. Advice tip number 2 is to take it steady. Now, it's a long ride, it's 100 miles a day, it's 9 days, and if you set out too fast and you go too quickly and you knacker yourself in the first couple of days, well, you're going to struggle to do the 9 days. So pacing is everything. There was one fella on our trip, nice guy. He was a bit faster than me and my friend Ian, who rode together, but he wasn't quite as fast as some of the faster groups, but he wanted to be, so he would latch on to the back, and we would see him fairly regularly during the day, about 10 yards, 20, sometimes 30, sometimes 50 yards off the back, pedalling furiously, trying to keep up. And I would say to him, look, mate, ease off a bit, you're going to kill yourself. No, he was young enough, he was strong enough. I think he got to the end without too much trouble. But if you're anything like, the normal run-of-the-mill cyclist on these kind of routes, in other words, generally in your 50s, you need to take it at your own pace, particularly on the hills, particularly on the first couple of days where there are a lot of hills, there's a lot of climbing, it's quite tough. So just take it steady, take it easy, don't try and ride with the fast boys, just go at your own pace, and you will find that you can complete the full journey with relative comfort. Tip number 3 is to have reliable kit. Now, I don't just mean kind of clothing, although one of the guys had a problem with his cleats. So you want cleats that aren't going to break, that aren't going to fall apart, and you want bits on your bike. Now, punctures, well, you can't do much about punctures, but do make sure you get your bike properly checked before you go on a trip like this. Say to them in the bike shop, you're doing Land's End to John O'Groats, and you want them to check everything, and change your brake pads, change your brake blocks, change your chain, change your bar tape. As these consumables are pretty cheap. If they have got some wear in them, get it changed. You will thank yourself, and make sure all of the bolts are checked. I took my bike to a bike shop, and he said one of the things about new carbon bikes, or carbon bikes in general, is that they are made to such tight tolerances that the bolts have to be done up precisely to the right torque, not too little, not too much, and that means they ought to be checked pretty regularly. And he checked the torque torque of the bolts on my handlebar and stem, and he found they were not quite at the right level, so he tightened them up, and I was very grateful to him for doing that. So the other thing, of course, is don't buy a whole load of new stuff just for this trip. You want stuff that you've used before. You want stuff that you're familiar with. You want stuff that you know how it works. You want stuff that you don't want to get any big surprises. So for example, don't go tubeless a week before this trip. If you want to go tubeless, that's fine, but do it, a couple of months before to give you time to learn how the various things work and how the various things go wrong. So reliable kit is my third particular tip. My fourth tip is, this is a Wahoo. You might have a Wahoo, you might have a Garmin, you might have a Hammerhead, you might have some other kind of unit. But if you're doing an organised ride such as this, then the organisers will provide you with GPX files of the route, which you can then load up onto your machine, and then you can follow a kind of breadcrumb trail. Now, you may be an old school rider, you may be very used to having all your route directions on a piece of paper, which you put in a plastic folder on your handlebars and so on and so forth. If you're anything like me, you're not familiar with that system, your eyesight isn't very good. I certainly couldn't read that kind of thing while I was riding along, so every time I came to a junction I would have had to stop and check the piece of paper for the route directions. You can use your phone, but I would rather strongly advise against it for a couple of reasons. One, it drains the battery very quickly on your phone. Secondly, you could be in a situation, even though your phone might be fairly securely attached to your handlebars, when you go over your bump, you go over a bump or a pothole or something like that, and your phone flies off and it smashes. Now, okay, that can happen to your Wahoo or your Garmin, but if it does, you've still got your phone, assuming you've got your phone safely in your pocket. So I would strongly advise against using your phone. There were a couple of guys who tried to use their phone on the trip and they came a cropper because the batteries didn't last. They had a problem with the route. It just wasn't successful. So my advice to you would be, either make sure you are very familiar with how to use the route directions, or get yourself a bike computer. Now, you can get cheaper ones. You don't have to get, all singing, all dancing, latest Garmin 1030, etc., but one that's got navigation and breadcrumb trails on them, you will find particularly useful. Next tip is nutrition. Now, you're going to be cycling 100 miles a day, 9 days. You have to get the calories into your body. If you don't get sufficient calories, certainly over the first couple of days, by the third day you will really suffer. Now, it's not easy to consume the sort of 5,000 to 6,000 calories that you probably need to be eating on a trip like this, but you can get somewhere close to it if you're stopping regularly, by which I mean 3, maybe 4 times a day, and you're eating proper food. Don't try and subsist on energy gels and just snacks and bits of cake. By all means, stop for a mid-morning break for a cup of coffee and a piece of cake, but when you stop for lunch, try and get some proper food inside you, a proper meal. If you can get some pasta, you can get some potatoes, perhaps a baked potato, perhaps you can get a decent sized baguette or a sandwich, get some proper savoury food inside you. The sugar, sugar in your bottle, very important. Sugar in the cakes, very important. But get some decent, proper food inside you, and your body will thank you. And as I say, I got to the end of the 9 days pretty straightforwardly, not suffering too much. I don't think I ate 6,000 calories a day on any day, but I was eating regularly, I was eating a decent amount, and it all helps. That's all I can say. It all helps. The next piece of advice is, if you are using your phone, or if you are using a bike computer, some bike computers have a decent battery life. The Wahoo has a decent battery life, although I did use a Wahoo Roam on one day and the battery life did run out before the end of the ride. So a power bank. Now, this is quite a big power bank. I wouldn't take one of this kind of size, but take a power bank in your pocket or in your top tube bag or your handle bag or whatever it is. Do, by the way, check the cable connection. Now that might sound a bit obvious to you, but my Wahoo Roam uses a USB micro connector, whereas this new Wahoo Bolt uses a USB-C connector. And if you don't make sure you've got the right cable, then obviously your power bank is a waste of time. Now, I lent my power bank to a couple of the riders on one day when their phones were running out of power, and I lent my cable to somebody else on another day. She had a power bank, but she had the wrong cable. So strongly suggest that you take a power bank with you, and that way you can charge your devices if you need to, either at the lunch stop, or if it's set up in the correct way, you can charge them while you're riding along. Now, my seventh suggestion and tip I'm actually going to refer to, but I'm going to cover in a separate video, and that is how best to dry your clothes on a trip like this, so you can ensure that you've got a change of clothes, you're not wearing the same shorts every day. But I'll cover that in a separate video. So thanks for watching. Hope you found these tips and suggestions useful. As I say, there are more lessons from LeJog videos coming along. Make sure you watch them all. And if you're doing your own Land's End Jog and Goats ride, or you're doing an equally long multi-day ride of any sort, then I say good luck to you. Well done, and I hope it goes well. So thanks for watching. See you next time.